Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. Thanks for joining me today for a Halloween inspired video for my almost last day of the month for July. I'm going to be using this second smallest bat from the Halloween Bats Decorative Die Set from scrapbook.com, as well as some pattern paper, some smooth cardstock, and some glitter paper from scrapbook.com. I also have some alphabet stickers, some gold twine, and I have some basic A2 rectangles and circles to help me create my spinner card. So I'm going to start with my base. I'm grabbing some ultra thick Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm going to trim this down to 4¼ by 11, and then I'm going to score it at 5½. So I'm creating an A2 card base. Now scrapbook.com does sell top folding A2 bases, but I need to restock, so I'm making my own. I'm going to die cut my pattern paper. This is from the Playful Pattern Collection pack, and I'm going to die cut this 6x8 paper down to A2, which is 4¼ by 5½. I'm grabbing some Circle Basics. This is a really old die set from Lawn Fawn, but you can use any of your Circle Basics. And I'm going to see which circle best fits my bats, and I'm going to go one larger. So I'm going one larger to create my window inside of my pattern paper. I'm using some mint tape to keep my A2 die and my circle die centered. I'm doing my best to make sure my circle is even on the top and sides, and that way it will create a nice little window in my card to create a spinner card. So now that I've ran that through my die cut machine, I'm pulling off my dies and mint tape, and I'm going to set aside everything and just keep that rectangle with the circle inside of it. So now I'm going to take the next size smaller. So this one just fits my bat inside of the window, and I'm going to use it to die cut the window through my card base. So using the larger one as a guide, I'm going to use mint tape, and I'm going to die cut my circle into my card base. So this is going to be slightly smaller than my pattern paper, but I'm using it as a guide so I can make sure that my hole is nice and centered onto my card base, and it will line up well with my pattern paper. I ran that through my die cut machine, and I'm going to go ahead and save that circle for a future project. And now I need to figure out how I'm going to create my metallic orange frame. So what I've decided to do is to take that same pattern paper with the large circle, and I'm going to take the smaller circle and center it again using mint tape and run it through my die cut machine. Now this is going to have the same size circle as my card base, and it will be smaller than my pattern paper. So as you can see, I'll be able to layer them together, and it will create a orange metallic circle frame underneath my pattern paper. So I'm going to trim my orange paper to be smaller than A2 on the width and pretty much be a square. You'll see here once I'm all done trimming all 4 sides of my orange metallic paper, and this is because I'm just going to glue it in between my white card base and my yellow pattern paper. So now you can see I have a nice orange metallic kind of frame, even though it's more inlay because I die cut it underneath my pattern paper. And I'm going to use these 2 pieces to sandwich my thread for my spinner card. So this is some gold metallic thread that I've had in my stash for a really long time. I will find something similar from scrapbook.com, and I will put it in my description box below with the rest of my supplies. But I'm trimming this down so it will fit across my window. I know it's kind of hard to see right now, but I am doing my best to center that thread onto my card, so I'm using my grid mat as a guide, and I'm going to use some 1/4" scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive roll just to add a piece to the top and bottom of my circle window. I'm going to pull off that release paper, and then again using my grid on my mat, I'm going to center my gold thread so that's in the center of my window. Once it's in place, I'm going to trim off some of the extra so that way it won't stick out over the edge of the card, and then I'm going to add another piece of double-sided adhesive on top of it so I can really sandwich in that thread and make sure it is nice and sturdy and it won't get pulled out by my card receiver. So now that that thread is in place, I'm going to sandwich it in with that metallic paper. So I'm going to flip over my metallic paper and I'm going to add some adhesive along all four sides. And then I'm going to add a little bit in the corner so that way it adds some extra stability around the circle part of my paper. Once all of the release paper is pulled up, I'm going to line up the two holes together, the card base and the orange metallic, so it's sandwiches in that string and they line up perfectly and it creates a clean look on the inside of my card as well. So now I'm going to create my bat spinner. Now these bats are not symmetrical, so when you glue two together they need to be facing the same way on the die. So the back side of my spinner will actually be the back side of the die cut. So I added some adhesive to my bat. I'm again using my grid mat to help me line up the bat, and then I'm going to use some of my craft glue to add in adhesive around to give me a little bit of wiggle time to glue the second piece of my bat together. So just like I sandwich in the string for my card base and the orange metallic paper, I am sandwiching in the thread into my bats. I use my tweezers to keep those in place, let it dry while I cleaned up my workstation, and I am going to now move on to finishing my background for my card. So I'm going to use my permanent adhesive runner and I'm going to add some adhesive to the top, sides, and bottom of my polka dotted pattern paper here. I'm also going to go around my circle kind of like I did with the metallic paper, adding it to the corners around the circle, making sure there's lots of adhesive and it will stick well to the metallic paper. And it's cut to A2 so it will line up perfectly with the front of my card base. My circle did end up a little off center, but that's okay. I still think it looks really cute and you just know that it's handmade this way. I'm going to use my scoring tool to help me really crease my card, and here's an example of how the bat will spin. I'm winding it up. The receiver will open up the card and the bat will spin around. So now that the interactive part of this card is done, let's work on adding a sentiment. I've got some black and orange cardstock. I have my Celebrate Expressions where I'm going to use the sentiment Happy Halloween onto my black cardstock. And I also have some alphabet stickers. They're not yet released, but make sure you add it to your wish list and get notified when these yellow with orange polka dot letter alphabet stickers come out soon. So I'm going to line up my Happy Halloween stamps onto my stamping block. I love the grid, helps me make sure that it's nice and even and straight. I use an embossing tool to add some anti-static powder, and then I'm using my Brutus Monroe embossing ink to apply ink to my stamp, and I'm going to use the Alabaster ultra fine white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe as well to emboss my Happy Halloween sentiment. So while I clean that up, I warmed up my heat gun and then I'm going to melt that embossing powder down. Once it's cool enough, I'm just going to use a Swiffer dusting cloth to pick up the excess anti-static powder. Now for my alphabet stickers, I'm trying to think of what sentiment I want to add on top of my Happy Halloween. So I'm going to grab my T-ruler because it's clear and easy to apply stickers to. And I'm going to do the word spooky. So I'm going to pull off each of those individual letters, get them all nice and straight and even, and then use that to help me put them onto my black cardstock. So putting it against my black cardstock, adhering it to the top, and then pulling very carefully the ruler off the stickers. I made sure my stickers were nice and glued down, and I'm just going to grab a little mini trimmer here to trim out around my sentiment. So I'm going to get really close to my spooky sentiment and the Happy Halloween, trimming all four sides. Once that's done and it will fit underneath my little spinner window, I'm going to add a piece of orange cardstock behind it, cutting a very, very thin amount around my black because it will barely fit underneath my circle, but I still wanted that pop of orange behind the black cardstock. I'm going to use my craft glue to adhere that down so it gives me a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I have it nice and centered onto that orange cardstock. Once those are adhered together and the glue is dry, I'm going to grab my 2-inch foam adhesive roll and I'm going to trim a piece down and apply it to the back side of my sentiment. And then I'll pop that up onto my card base just under my spinner window, again using my grid mat to help me center it as best as possible. Now I wanted to add a little bit more to the card, so I'm going to get out some glossy accents and I'm going to cover all of my letters in the word spooky. But I wanted to add more touches of black around the card, so I'm going to grab the smallest bat and die cut a couple bats out of some extra scrap black cardstock, and I'm going to use my wet glue to adhere those down. I'm going to do one in the lower right hand corner around my circle and one in the upper left hand corner. And then I also have pops of color in a black gloss, and I'm just going to add a bunch of little pops all around my card. Now when these come out of the bottle, they do kind of have a Hershey Kiss look to them. So in order to dome those out, I'm going to open up the card and just tap on the bottom, so like on the inside of the card, on the other side of that card front, and I'm going to tap on it and it just kind of evens out those little pops and creates an enamel dot look. So let me wind up my bat one more time, give it quite a few twists here, and I'll close the card so you can imagine you are the card receiver. So once you open the card, you'll see the bat spin around, and I think it's so cute. I really like how this card turned out. I love the orange and the yellow with the pops of black. It's just very Halloween, and it's getting me really excited to head to the fall season. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!